Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Chris and Purrs. My name's Leslie, and guess what? My apartment is a disaster, so I'm using the circle today. One of the promises I made to myself this year would be that I was going to incorporate more tags into my channel, and I have not kept up. So this is the first chance I've had, and it's already March. So the lovely book chat with Pat just did this tag. I just saw it and I thought it was kind of like a really quick and easy one that I could kind of tackle. And so this tag was, it's brand new and is created by Becky from Book Reviews with Becky. I'll have all the prompts listed in the details. All right, so here goes. The first prompt is, what is an unpopular book opinion preference you have? I don't necessarily have an unpopular book opinion. Let me see what I could potentially say. All right, you let me know if this is unpopular. I kind of look at all of us in the booktube community as kind of like literary taste testers. And so I just strongly believe we don't have to have the exact same opinion or agree on everything. But sometimes in the community, there's not a lot of room for, or I should say, sometimes discussions aren't really welcomed. And I feel like the whole point of reading a book is to foster discussions and discourse. But sometimes people feel very passionately and they don't really want to really see an opinion as an opinion. Sometimes people take on their opinion as fact. And so that sometimes that's frustrating. That's not necessarily like an unpopular book opinion. That's more of an unpopular book community discussion. And so, yeah, that's kind of where that one lands. All right. So the second question is, has your reading taste changed over the years? How? I've definitely been more open to romance, as where before I really wasn't. It's been a journey. There's the Rebel Blue Ranch romance series that I really, really enjoyed. So the romance books that really captivate me are when there's like a family element incorporated into it, which that book series does really well. And I could see why it took off so well, because yes, there may be a romance at the core, but there's all these other components. There's all these other ideas about like fostering family and community that just really speak to me. So romance is definitely the area where my where my reading has really developed. Okay, the third question is, what genre do you read to get out of a book slump? I will read any genre, but to get out of a book slump, I want to read something funny, preferably, or I want to read short stories or anthologies, which is basically potentially comprises of short stories. There's something, the idea of finishing a short story in an anthology, that gives me the sense of like accomplishment, even though if it's like a false sense, and that does help me get out of a rut or out of sometimes if you continue to watch my channel, sometimes I get very emotional and I need a break, and my break has always been reading anthologies and short stories. The fourth question is, what are some of your automatic buy authors? Hands down, Hanif Abdurraqib. He's potentially the only auto buy author that I have, really, that I feel so passionately about, because he can write about any subject and I'm gonna read it. I'm not even gonna think about it. So he's the first author that comes to mind, and I've probably mentioned him way too many times on my channel. So the fifth question is, how many chances do you give an author before you want to try them again? Oh, how many chances? I'll give them two tries. There was an author where her writing was so riveting, and almost like on the verge of being cinematic, but what threw it off was the world building, which is kind of like what I could have an issue with sometimes in science fiction. And that is the author of Womb City. I still want that book to be adapted. I still think it's a good book. There's just like some issues with like the world building that didn't really work out for me. Again, that's typically an issue between me and like sci-fi. Yeah, that's the only one I could potentially think of. But I brought that author up or that book up because the author wrote some short stories beforehand. So I think I want to pick up their short story collection at some point and see what that lends as far as like the perspective of the author, going from writing a short story collection and then delving into like a full length science fiction novel and see if it could kind of like connect what was going on there. So yeah, 2 tries and that's it for me. Do you have anything you like to do, listen to while you read? Lo-fi. I really like lo-fi. There's one on YouTube. I think it's Dark Academia. I'll say like Vampire Cafe or something like that. I really like that one. There's also Hexon, Hexon. There's also Lo-Fi Soul, which if you've been to MA Sprints, Lo-Fi Soul is my go-to, because there's just such a lovely melody, but it's not soft enough to lull me to sleep, and it's not too busy sounding to be a distraction, if that makes any sense. All right, 7th question. How far do you read before DNF'ing? It takes a lot for me to DNF a book. Even if I don't like a book, I will force myself to finish it. Like if I have to borrow an audiobook, if I have to plow through a book in that way, I'll do it. It's pretty rare that I'll DNF a book. Usually if I'm DNFing, it's just maybe I feel distracted or like the pressure of reading. It's typically not the book. I just read a book recently that I was excited to read, and it just fell flat, and I read the whole thing because ultimately I want to use books to have a discussion, and I can't really have a discussion about a book if I haven't read it. And I'm definitely not going to rate a book if I've DNF'd it, at least for me. If I haven't read enough, it just doesn't seem to really give the author justice for all the work that they put into their book. The 8th question is, do you ever find yourself making the same faces as the characters in the books? I have not. I've definitely enjoyed Instagram and seeing people kind of act out some of the descriptions of characters in books, but I have not made faces. I've definitely had gasping, jaw-dropping moments in books, but definitely not mirroring the characters in any way. Number 9, rereading. Yes, no, depends. I'm definitely down for a reread, but it just depends on the quality of the book. Was there something about the book that lends to rereading? For instance, A Song of Ice and Fire, everyone knows that as a Game of Thrones because that was made into a series on HBO. Those books are the kind of books when you go back and reread, the author put basically like Easter eggs in there. He really wrote the books in a way where he's rewarding you for rereading. And it's actually really frustrating because I reread some of the books and you can kind of see that he's giving you the answers to what's going on very early on for what's going to happen 4 books later. But when you're first reading it, you just don't realize it. And so, oops, sorry, my desk is right here. Yeah, I've just definitely really enjoyed that. Another author that's definitely a reread for me is Hanif Durkee, which I already mentioned, but just because his writing is so like beautiful and powerful. And the same thing could be said for like James Baldwin. There's a lot for me to study just in terms of his work stylistically, the way he writes imagery, his prose and just what he's trying to say overall in his books. So definitely a reread. All right, and then the last question is basically just to tag others. So if you're watching this, I'm tagging you. I am going to tag some people. I'll try to tag people that I've recently subscribed to in case they're interested in kind of hopping on this Tag Tuesday train. So everyone, thank you for holding on. And if you want to answer any of these questions, but you don't necessarily want to do the Tag Tuesday, go ahead and write your answers in the comments. I'll see you later. Happy reading.